You live? Okay, thank you very much. The press conference today is essentially to deal with the manner in which two letters that we sent to the lawyers for the Auditor General have been reported by all three daily newspapers. The way in which the three daily newspapers has reported these two letters, one of which was 19 pages long and had very large number of appendices, and the other one was not so long without appendices. The first letter was dealing with the whole question of the illegality and unconstitutionality of the internal investigation that is being conducted at the Ministry of Finance. That was letter number one. And then letter number two was a response to a long legal letter that we received from the attorneys representing the Auditor General that made a number of statements and sought to give their side of the story with respect to the public accounts and the amended public accounts and so on. But what I want to discuss with you today is the manner in which the newspapers have reported these two letters, because some of the reporting is quite inaccurate, and of course the headlines are all wrong. So, and then of course I will avail myself, I'll be here for any questions on any other matters you wish to speak about. Let me go here now. It's a pity the Express is not here, because the reporting by the Express was particularly bad. I was quite surprised that the reporting by the Guardian was accurate. I was very taken aback. The headline in the Newsday was bad, and there's a particular issue that I would like to address. In the Express, the headline is, Imbert drops legal action against premature report. There was never any legal action against any premature report. So there's no legal action to drop. It was never contemplated in the first place. What we said in the pre-action letter, what our lawyers said, was that we do not intend to pursue legal action at this time. The words are very, very, very clear. Towards the end of the pre-action letter, we indicate that we are hopeful that a special report would be forthcoming using the information that the ministry is going to make available to the Auditor General's department over the next couple of weeks. And these are the words. As such, the minister will be foregoing, for the time being, any legal proceedings to challenge the Auditor General's decision to prematurely submit the Auditor General's report. These words do not lead to Imbert drops legal action against report, because there is no legal action to drop. Okay? I noticed that the Newsday had a similar headline. Let me see if I can pull it up. So I want to be quoted accurately, or I don't want to misrepresent what was in the Newsday. So let me just get that. Yeah. Today's Newsday? No, the front page, or whatever it was. Imbert forgoes legal action against Auditor General, agrees to special report. I don't understand what that means. What we are hoping is that the Auditor General will follow up on a statement made in one of the legal letters written to us that she might be prepared to consider a special report. So it's not a question of us agreeing to a special report. We are hopeful that that will occur. But there are a number of points that have been missed in the narrative. The point is that in the letter in particular that answered the various points made in the Auditor General's letter, dated 28th of April 2024, my lawyers, our lawyers, went through a number of issues. And what they dealt with was the issues of the backdating of the amended accounts, the non-provision of documents to support the expenditure, an alleged omission by the Ministry of Finance that over $700 million cannot be accounted for, an alleged failure to provide any financial records to substantiate and verify the increase in revenue, the submission of the report itself, the alleged refusal of the minister to lay the report as required by law, and also the statement made by the Auditor General that she could not lawfully consider the amended public accounts. And then another heading is alleged attempted coercion of the Auditor General by the government. There are a number of very, very important points in these letters. Let me deal with the whole question of the investigation. What the ministry's lawyers determined is that based on a Privy Council case where the Chief Justice had challenged an investigation that was being done by the Law Association, and that is, the case is 2018 UK PC 23, the Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago versus the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago. In that case, I'm reading directly from the letter that my attorneys wrote to the attorneys for the Auditor General. In that case, the Chief Justice brought judicial review proceedings against the Law Association, challenging its inquiry into certain allegations made against him. The Chief Justice claimed that the Law Association had no power to conduct the proposed inquiry on the ground, inter alia, that Section 137 of the Constitution laid down the only way in which the conduct of a judge might be investigated. My lawyers have put into this letter to the lawyers for the Auditor General, your client makes the same contention with regard to Section 136. The Privy Council rejected the Chief Justice's contention, and Lady Hale stated, the short answer to all these points is that the Law Association is in no position to make findings of fact which are in any way binding upon the Chief Justice or upon any tribunal which might be established under Section 137. As acknowledged in its letter of 23 February, the further steps to be considered might include assuring the public that after due examination, the Law Association is satisfied that the allegations have no merit or provide no basis for concern, or, at the other end of the spectrum, the further steps might include referring a complaint to the Prime Minister for him to treat with it as he deems fit. That is the most it could do. Point being made here, and the point being made in this letter from my attorneys to the attorneys for the Auditor General, is that the Privy Council has made it clear that an investigation can take place because, or based on the learning from the Privy Council in that matter, an investigation can take place, but the investigation is not binding on the persons involved. It does not lead to disciplinary action. It does not lead to removal from office or anything like that. It's simply an investigation. And it is important to understand, because the way the newspapers are portraying this thing is that I am saying we're going ahead and so on. What's important is the reason. The reason is that this investigation cannot be binding on anyone, cannot be binding on any of the public servants involved or the Auditor General herself. It is simply a fact-finding mission to determine what happened. Once the facts have been established, then other things can be done. But the investigation itself is just to determine the facts. So I just thought I would make that crystal clear. With respect to the other letter, it's long and detailed and there are appendices. And I would ask the media, just go through the letter. I know you got it a bit late yesterday afternoon. Go through it and see the points that are being made. All right, and I'm now available to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, I mean, just digesting this very, very late, the 24, 25 pages of combined letters, what jumped out at me is the letters do speak about Section 136 of the Constitution, about the removal, it refers to the removal of a special office holder such as Attorney General. And one wonders if that's premature. How does one move from a fact-finding mission to this attorney's letter at length going on, maybe 3 or 4 sentences making reference to the removal of an office holder? Isn't it a bit of a jump?
I think I will have to give you some leeway in view of the fact that you said you haven't really read the letters properly. What it refers to is the fact that Section 136 is not relevant to this investigation at all. What the attorneys for the Auditor General had said is that under Section 136 of the Constitution, or in consideration of Section 136 of the Constitution, we couldn't proceed with this investigation. What we are saying, this has nothing to do with Section 136 of the Constitution. Nothing to do with it. Because that section speaks to the removal of the Auditor General. It does not speak to an investigation into anything. It speaks to removal. And let me crystallize it, because I realize it's a lot of pages. I'm a bit surprised at your conclusions, Sean. They are opposite to the facts. The facts are that we are saying that the contention that Section 136 of the Constitution comes into play with respect to the Ministry of Finance investigation is wrong, because it does not. Our 136 speaks to the removal of the Auditor General, and that is done by way of the establishment of a tribunal by the President in accordance with prescribed procedures. Our investigation cannot and does not even contemplate the idea of invoking Section 136 of the Constitution. Our investigation is just to determine what happened. Okay, so you have it wrong side, John. Okay, you read it for yourself.
Have you received any response from the Auditor General and or her attorneys after issuing this letter?
Not yet. It was sent out yesterday at about 4 o'clock, sometime like that.
Some would argue that this entire situation could have been avoided had private discussions been held sooner, and this letter or the contents of this letter shared before everything came into the public domain. Do you agree with that?
Which letter?
Well, the two that you would have sent.
These are responses.
Responses. But it came out of.
How can we share a response?
It came out of the letters that were sent.
No, we were written to.
Mm-hmm.
In one case, we were threatened with legal action. We were told that we had to respond by yesterday, and that it was clearly implied in that letter that the matter would be taken to the court. Okay, that is one. The other one, we were written to and told a whole series of things, and we responded. So I don't understand where you're coming from. So that we are written to by attorneys for the Auditor General, making a number of statements and allegations, and then those letters are published on the front page of the newspapers. Sometimes it appears they get to the newspapers before we even receive the letters. And everything is there verbatim, the pages and pages and pages of all these statements that are made. And when we respond, we're not supposed to respond?
Yes.
So I don't really understand where you're coming from.
The entire debacle. Right?
So you're shifting from the letters to the debacle.
Well, that was getting at the entire thing. Should have or could have been handled in-house without the use.
Okay, what I would suggest you do to get the answer to those points that you are making, what I suggest you do is read the letter that is headed Report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2023. Read that letter. If you read that letter, you will get a better understanding of what transpired and why it was not possible to do what you say, because attempts were made to do exactly that. That's what this letter says. It sets it all out in chronological form, all of the various attempts to do exactly that, to have these conversations behind closed doors, out of the public eye, confidentially, and all that sort of thing. This letter outlines all of the attempts made to do exactly that. Okay? So just take a read of it. It's good reading. It answers every point.
Shifting gears, if we are allowed to.
But that's it with the Auditor General's report?
For now.
No, not just you. Everybody in here?
I mean, I did have a question, maybe a little philosophical. The mere fact that this independent office holder is part of the subject of inquiry of an investigation, isn't that like really intimidating on the person, and could that not be seen as a stain on the person? You are subject of an investigation. And I guess the follow-up to that would be, should she not be entitled to legal fees to make sure that she's robust in all of this?
All right, I think you got two things wrong there. I would advise you to go and read carefully the letter that is entitled Pre-Action Protocol Letter dated 12th of May 2024. You will see in that case there was an investigation by the Law Association into the Chief Justice. Do you think the Chief Justice felt intimidated with respect to that matter? The whole point of this is that the law has been settled that investigations can be held. It is what happens with the information. The information cannot be used to defame people, for example. It cannot be used to get them out of office or anything like that. This is simply to find out what happened. You have to remember as well, because the story is being distorted. I was very clear that the genesis of all of this confusion, if I can use that word, was the introduction of a new electronic check clearing system by the central bank. I was very clear about that. That prior to 2023, the central bank would send physical copies of checks to the Board of Inland Revenue, properly sorted and tabulated and so on. And then the staff at the Board of Inland Revenue would physically look at each piece of paper and determine what the true revenue situation was. A new system came in February 2023 where everything is now done electronically using images, electronic images. So no longer do you have this bunch of paper traveling from the commercial banks to the central bank to the Board of Inland Revenue. And it is clear that arising from the introduction of that new system, errors were made, because an error was made. There was a posting, a double posting of refunds of approximately $2.6 billion. I need to explain this because people have turned this thing upside down and around and made a complete distortion of what really happened. So that the central bank posted refunds of the amount of $2.6 billion twice and then corrected it, okay? So that's where the $2.6 billion came from, because revenue is gross revenue minus refunds. So the central bank indicated to the Board of Inland Revenue that on this particular day, we cashed tax refund checks in the amount of $2.6 billion. And the Board of Inland Revenue accepted that information as accurate and did their calculations. The central bank subsequently corrected it, and that's where the story becomes murky, because you have various public servants saying on one side, yes, I told you we corrected it, and then others saying, no, I didn't receive the correction. And therefore, the whole purpose of this investigation, it has several purposes, but one of the main purposes is to find out, did that really happen? Is it a fact that when the new electronic check clearing system came in, there were errors. There were double postings of enormous sums of money. It was not communicated properly to the Board of Inland Revenue. The Board of Inland Revenue never received the corrections. We have to find that out. Okay, we have to find out whether the new check clearing system is working properly. Is it effective? Is it fit for purpose? Should it be continued with? Should they revert to the manual system? We don't want this to happen again. So that's object number one. And then object number two is the efforts made by the public servants in the various divisions, the Treasury, Inland Revenue, etc., to deal with it, because the error was subsequently discovered. The double posting was discovered. So the next part of the investigation is, when was that discovered? How was it discovered? Who discovered it? And then what happened now? What was done after that? And then the third part is, having established what really happened, because the public servants are telling me they took a while to really pin down what really happened, they then sought to present the corrections to the Auditor General, and that is where the allegations then come in. They tried and they were not allowed to present the information. So that's the purpose of all of it. I can't see why anybody will be intimidated by all of that. We're simply trying to find out what went on. And there are multiple purposes here. Eh? You certainly would not want this to happen again. I certainly don't want this to happen again. This is a huge distraction. We have a country to run. All of this fighting between public servants about who did what, when, where, and how, and who didn't want to talk to who, and who didn't take a call from who, and who refused to accept documents, and who made mistakes. This is not what the national conversation should be, okay? So we need to fix this, and the only way we can fix it is to find out what happened, lessons learned, and corrections going forward, okay? So I don't see anything in any relevance in what you're saying in terms of somebody being intimidated. So are we not to find out what happened? So we could never correct this and it will happen next year again? No way. Okay? TV6 arrives.
Mr. Honourable Minister, thank you for acknowledging. In terms of the system that manages all of this, is the system itself in need of some overhaul or review, as you said, to avoid this happening?
June, let me correct you. It's not, you can't overhaul something that is brand new. This is a brand new system. So it needs examination, which is what we're looking at right now. We're looking to see who built this system. You know, there are all sorts of questions you want to ask. Was this done in-house? Is it a proprietary system? Is it off the shelf? Did consultants do it? Is it something that is used in other countries? You know, we need to find that out. Then we need to find out, is the system robust? Is it fit for purpose? Does it have bugs in it? Does it have glitches in it? Can it be corrected? Or is there no problem at all? It could be just human error that the central bank was performing its function efficiently and effectively, sending proper information to the Board of Inland Revenue, and the people in the Board of Inland Revenue fell down and didn't, you know, pay attention. Or the central bank was making mistakes and sending bad information to the Board of Inland Revenue and not correcting it. We need to find out. So it's two problems here. It is the efficacy, the effectiveness of this new computerized system, and whether human error was involved in making these mistakes. And we must investigate. I think it's ludicrous for anybody to suggest that we can't investigate. I think that's ridiculous. And to personalize it as an attack on people is also ridiculous. It would be irresponsible of us just leave that so. Leave it alone, you know? Let it go through some process in the Constitution that might take 15 years to complete. There's no way we're doing that. We're doing a fact-finding investigation. We must get to the bottom of this.
I know last week you had said in response to questions that errors have happened in the past based on your conversations with public servants. Is the issue on this occasion the amount in terms of the error on this occasion?
I can't answer that. It could be. It could be. Perhaps in the past the errors were of lesser magnitude. We'll find that out as well. That's part of the investigation, to see what was the practice in the past. You know, was it normal that after the submission on January 31st that there will be a conversations and exchange of documentation dealing with what appear to be mistakes, or maybe the public servants themselves discovered after the fact there were mistakes. That's another thing we're seeking to find out in this investigation. But a lot of it is covered in the letter. You came late, but we wrote 2 letters yesterday. Well, our lawyers did, sorry. And one of them is entitled Report of the Auditor General and the Public Accounts for the financial year 2023. And many of the questions you are asking is covered inside of here in terms of what really happened, because this letter is actually an account from the perspective of the public servants as to what really went on. It's in this letter. I can't go outside this letter because I'll get sued. Okay? So I have to stick to what's in here. So I just say, read it. Okay?
Minister, in response to my colleague's question, you said that the system needs to be interrogated.
Examined, yeah, interrogated, yeah.
Why wasn't that done before? And going forward, how are we going to, or what are we going to put in place to ensure that not just in this particular instance, but in other aspects where we digitize and digitalize, that we don't have this reoccurring?
Well, certainly this is a wake-up call. That's for sure. Okay? In terms of why it wasn't done before, the error didn't present itself before. This thing had been going on for a year, apparently. And what was happening is that the IT specialists in the central bank and the IT specialists in the Board of Inland Revenue were communicating on a regular basis to resolve the issues. So there was no indication. They didn't escalate it up the chain to their seniors, and then up to the top people in the Board of Inland Revenue, and then up to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and then up to me as minister. It wasn't escalated. It was technocrats working with themselves, trying to resolve what seemed to be bugs in a program. So that's why it wasn't done before. Now that this thing has happened, and you see the magnitude of the error, the interrogation has to take place. Okay, with respect to other similar software programs, I couldn't agree with you more. This is definitely a wake-up call in terms of the thrust towards digitalization, for sure.
And forgive me if this was ever asked in the past, but the cost of this system?
I don't know. That's a central bank procurement issue. I can't give you the cost. And I can tell you something. Sometimes we get questions in Parliament with respect to the operations of the central bank and their expenditure and so on. And there is unfortunately a secrecy provision in the Central Bank Act, and we are unable to get the information. So I have no idea what it costs. I just expect and hope it would have been cost effective. Okay? I didn't get any indication it was any huge exorbitant sum, but I can't tell you. Okay?
In terms of the person who would have provided the software, the company that created the software, any?
Well, we'll see what will come out of the investigation. I'm hoping that a lot of that information will come out. So far, we've been told there's going to be full cooperation. So hopefully we'll get the answers to all those questions. As I said, we're not sure whether it was in-house or external or bought from a company or brought in from some other country. We are not sure. Remember, this is the central bank. And you have to understand, there are 2 entities that are associated with the Ministry of Finance where there are secrecy provisions. One of them is the central bank, and the other is the Board of Inland Revenue. And in both cases, the penalties are similar. Imprisonment for 10 years, a fine of $500,000, and so on, if you breach the secrecy provisions of the Central Bank Act or the Income Tax Act.
My final question on this, and I want to segue into outside of this a little bit. The last I heard from the Auditor General's attorneys was that they wanted their legal fees paid by the Ministry of the by
that was
the
dealt
Attorney
with
General.
at the last press conference.
Well,
And that,
I know
hold on. And that's a matter for the Attorney General. And that is also in the public domain. He has responded in writing, and those letters have been published in the papers. I suggest you pose those questions to him. That is a totally legal matter.
And that's why I'm segueing into another aspect, that is whether or not that came up in Cabinet today.
What came up?
The last time the Attorney General spoke on this, he said he was committed to paying the legal fees.
You're asking me what we discuss in Cabinet?
Well, it's
And you
post-Cabinet.
expect me to answer?
It's post-Cabinet media briefing, so
I wouldn't reveal what we discuss in Cabinet. You know that.
What was agreed
How
to
long
in
you know me?
Cabinet?
How long you know me now?
Was that one of the things agreed to in cabinet?
I would not discuss any matter that we discussed in cabinet. You know that.
Has the Attorney General then shifted his position on paying the legal fees, moving from strictly the advice that was sought?
I think I was very clear just now that the Attorney General made his position clear at last week's post-cabinet press conference, and the exchange of correspondence between the two parties on that matter. Those letters have been published verbatim in the daily newspapers. I rather suspect in the newspaper you work for. So all the answers that you're asking, you'll find it in your own newspaper.
In light of those letters that were written yesterday, that was asking.
No, these are completely different. This has nothing to do with legal fees. These are two different letters. One, you see, we got two different legal challenges coming at us. One was a pre-action letter telling us if we don't stop the investigation, the Auditor General's attorneys will go to court and make an application to stop us. That is issue number one. And the second letter was a letter from the Auditor General complaining about statements made in Parliament and stating her version of what happened. It's two different things. So we responded to the legal challenge that says they're going to court if we don't stop the investigation, and we responded to the statements made by the Auditor General's attorneys in the letter of the 28th of April. It has nothing to do with the whole question of legal fees. That's not posed to us because we don't pay legal fees. It would be for the Attorney General to handle that. That is exclusively within his domain. Okay?
I would, moving on, as they say, the Cabinet has given another 1-year extension to Commissioner of Police.
I'll deal with that just now. I just wanted to make it clear that I was really surprised at some of the headlines. And I know reporters don't write headlines. I know the editors do. But, I mean, this thing about dropping legal action and all of that, really, I will be communicating with the Express about your very imaginative headlines. Okay? Yes, let's move on now.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, so basically this is a direct, for the second time, Cabinet has directly exerted direct power to give it a time.
You work for the Newsday, right?
Right.
I happened to read an editorial in the Newsday that got it all wrong, that said there are legal challenges to Cabinet's authority to extend the term of the Commissioner of Police. And I wondered whether the editors of the Newsday had read the decision of Justice Rahim in the matter of the extension of the service of Ayla Hurwood Christopher, where Ravi Balgobin Maraj sued the state for the Cabinet's extension, that's the first one, the first extension of the term of the Commissioner of Police, and lost the case. The judge upheld the decision of Cabinet to extend the term, so that is High Court decision. And then the Court of Appeal affirmed the decision of Justice Rahim on a few days ago, and also went into some great detail about whether it was within the power and the purview of the Cabinet to extend the term of a sitting Commissioner of Police. And the Court of Appeal upheld that as well. So I couldn't understand that editorial in the Newsday, which seemed to think that there were all sorts of legal problems and legal conundrums and unsettled areas of law with respect to the Cabinet's authority to extend the term of the Commissioner. So I just wanted to make that point. So you could ask your question now.
Okay, thank you for the 2 interruptions.
I can't interrupt you, Sean. It's a press conference. So you are asking the questions, I'm answering.
Right. So,
by definition, I can't interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay. So the basic question is, having granted this extension, you look back on the 12 months for the first extension and how much confidence do you have that she can make a difference in the crime situation? Because we still have the mass shootings happening. Cocoa Harp Place, somebody in Tobago, I think yesterday. I mean, how much confidence do you have?
Okay. Sean, I assume you are going to be reporting on this matter?
On post-cabinet, to report post-cabinet?
This matter we're now discussing?
Yeah.
All right. Please go and get a copy of the decision of Justice Rahim in claim number CV 2023-02275 that he delivered, I believe it was January of 2024. Yes, it was in January of 2024. Please go and get a copy, because he makes this very important point on page 35 of the decision, and it's in paragraph 46 of his decision, right? In relation to the submission by the claimant that the evidence at the Police Service Commission was not consulted by the executive prior to making the decision to extend is one factor that assists in demonstrating that the application of Section 75 is inconsistent with Section 123 and the shift in the legislative framework. The court is of the view the opportunity of the Police Service Commission give its views on performance, though an important facet of the decision to extend is not one that leads to the conclusion of inconsistency in all the circumstances. The point he was making is this. These are his words. The ideal situation would, of course, be consultation with the Police Service Commission prior to any such extension being granted. What Rahim was saying was that while the Cabinet is not legally required to consult with the Police Service Commission before making a decision to extend the term of office of a sitting commissioner. I'll explain that in a little while. In fact, I better do it now. There's a big difference between extending the term of a sitting commissioner and appointing a new commissioner. The law that was developed in, I think it was 2006, when there was the police reform legislation, in that package of laws, there was a provision that the cabinet, well, the president, meaning cabinet, can extend the term of the commissioner of police for up to 3 years in 1-year intervals. Okay? This lawsuit was all about challenging that. Is it correct and proper for the cabinet to have the authority and the right to extend the term of a sitting commissioner? Because you have to make the distinction between appointing an acting commissioner, appointing a substantive commissioner, and extend the term of somebody who's already in the job. And when the various entities who did that 2006 legislation, you may remember that there was a lot of collaboration between then opposition leader Pandey and Prime Minister Manning, because this required a special majority. And Pandey agreed to support the legislation. The UNC agreed to support the legislation. The PNM government at the time got the special majority, and this came into play. And in this package of laws is that provision that if a commissioner is already appointed and the commissioner's term has not yet expired, the cabinet can extend for up to 3 years. This lawsuit is all about that, about is that right, is that proper, is that lawful, is that constitutional, etc., etc., etc. Is it, contrary to the Constitution? But the very important point made by Justice Rahim in agreeing that yes, the cabinet can do it. It is not a matter for the Police Service Commission. You don't have to go to Parliament. It doesn't require notification from the President. The cabinet can simply extend once the term has not yet expired. Because if we had not extended, then Ms. Christopher would no longer be a member of the police service. You have to make the distinction between a career police officer, someone who has come up through the ranks and has been appointed commissioner, has reached the age of 60, because first division officers must retire at 60. So this is a person who has come through the ranks, reached the age of 60, appointed as commissioner, cannot remain as a police officer to become the commissioner unless the term is extended by the cabinet. That's completely different to somebody appointed from outside. They could be over 60 years old. You could appoint a commissioner on contract with 65, for example. There's no requirement for the 60-year retirement age to kick in. So that the whole point of all of this is that what Rahim was looking at, can the cabinet extend the service of a sitting commissioner? And he said yes. And that was also upheld by the Court of Appeal. What happens when the person is a career police officer, is in the job, and is over the age of 60? You have to rely on that particular section where the cabinet can extend the service of that person by 3 years up to age 63. Okay? So, but Rahim said the ideal situation would, of course, be consultation with the Police Service Commission prior to any such extension being granted, because it is the Service Commission that legally and constitutionally is required to assess the performance of the Commissioner of Police using a scientific approach, a number of key performance indicators, a methodology. Consultants, I am not a member of the Police Service Commission. I don't know exactly how they did it. But we consulted with the Police Service Commission. We did exactly what Rahim had recommended. Before you make the decision to extend, consult with the Police Service Commission with respect to a performance evaluation, a review. And we were told that the Police Service Commission had, in fact, reviewed the performance of the Commissioner of Police between March of 2023 and February of 2024, and had completed its assessment, and had prepared an evaluation report, and had indicated that when all the scores are added up for all the various categories, because there are many of them, all sorts of things, procurement, financial management, training, policing, dealing with crime, there's a whole bunch of different things. I would put them into two categories, administrative and policing, if I can use the word policing, okay? So policing is dealing with crime, and administration is managing the entity, okay? And so the Police Service Commission assessed Ms. Christopher in all these different categories, a whole host of administrative categories and a whole host of policing categories. And at the end of the day, they told us in writing that she had a performance rating of good. Okay, and the performance ratings range from fair, good, very good, excellent, and obviously bad too. Okay, that's as a rating as well. So she did not get a fair rating. She did not get a bad rating. She got a good rating, which meant that her scores in all the various areas, and it's very comprehensive, was good. So we received that. So we are now, as a government, faced with a choice. You have a police commissioner who has received a good rating from an independent body, which is the body set up to assess the commissioner's performance. They've told us that in writing, that she got a good rating. There's a question of what happens if you don't extend the commissioner of police. If you didn't extend, then you have to go through the process of appointment of another person to be the commissioner of police, and then you have to go through a merit list, and it has a notification to the president, it has to come to the parliament, you have to have a debate, and you make a decision on it. And what has happened in the past, many years ago, is that when there was a vacancy in the office of commissioner of police, what the Police Service Commission did was they picked a deputy police commissioner to act. Because remember, this has to be an acting appointment. There's something else you need to understand. It is only in April that the Police Service Commission started the search for a new police commissioner. And these things take months. Some of them have taken over a year, from my memory. I've seen Police Service Commissions in the past take over a year to complete the exercise, to make a recommendation to the president, to send a merit list for it to come to the parliament for debate. So that the Police Service Commission began its exercise of recruitment of a new police commissioner by advertising in April. So one does not know when this exercise will be completed, but if one goes on practice and history, you're looking at towards the end of 2024, December 2024. So we, as a group of decision makers, we are faced with this, that the recruitment exercise for a new police commissioner will not be completed before the end of this year, most likely. And therefore, somebody has to be put to act. Who is going to be put to act? The practice of the Police Service Commission in the past is to appoint a deputy. We have 3 brand new deputies of commissioners of police. They only were approved by the Parliament just a couple months ago. They're untested, they're untried. Nobody knows much about them. So that you're also faced with this prospect that if you decide you will not exercise your authority to extend, then you go through the process of the Police Service Commission recommending an acting person, and most likely they will pick one of the 3 deputies who are completely green, untested at that level within the police service. They're not green police officers, but they are inexperienced in terms of being a deputy commissioner of police, which is the rank just below. So when one puts everything together, that the Police Service Commission has given the Commissioner of Police a good rating, that if we don't extend, then we enter uncharted territory. We have no idea who is going to crop up. It most likely is going to be one of the deputies, but we don't know, because we as a cabinet, we don't make that decision. The Police Service Commission goes through, comes up with a merit list and so on. We felt that in all the circumstances, the best thing to do was to extend. Because on what basis are we going to say we reject the scientific assessment by the Service Commission of the Commissioner's performance? Are we going to go on feelings? Which is something you said to me last week, that you told me that, we should go on feelings. And I don't think that it would be a proper thing to do. You can't go on feelings. There's a Service Commission that has assessed Ms. Christopher, rated her good, and then you have all the other complications that would arise if you did not extend. You don't know what would happen next. You don't know who would be recommended to act as police commissioner, and you would not get a recommendation for a permanent appointment for another 6 to 9 months. So that's the explanation.
I mean, is good enough on a scale on a 5? This is 3 on a 5 scale. I mean, is that good enough? I mean, and in fact, you didn't really actually answer my original question, which was
3 on a 5 scale. How did you arrive at that?
If bad, fair, good, very good,
I just
excellent.
said that you have fair, you have good, you have very good, you have excellent. You would also have bad. You could have very bad as well. That could be possible. So it's not necessarily 3 on a 5 scale. But what's your point? It's a good recommendation. It's not a bad recommendation. It's not a fair recommendation. It's a good recommendation. So for you to ask me if good is good enough, I'm afraid that's a difficult question for me to answer.
Well, and referring anecdotally, because sometimes we do have to, like, you can do all your evaluations, you're referring to feelings and so on, but you
I'm referring to your feelings. Your feelings.
So while you do all your analysis...
We didn't do the analysis.
Right.
Mr. Douglas, if you don't mind, and don't accuse me of interrupting you, but from time to time when you say things that are incorrect, I will have to correct you. So we didn't do any analysis. It is the Police Service Commission that analyzed the performance of the police commissioner and gave us the results of that analysis.
Right. The point is that even at your level as PM, right, acting PM, there is a place for hearing anecdote. There is a place for gauging what the mood is
feelings
in a place. Well, I mean, don't mock feelings.
I'm not mocking feelings. Don't you see? There you go again. I'll have to correct you. I'm not mocking Mr. Douglas.
Say that you guys are very out of touch.
I'm not mocking feelings, Mr. Douglas. Don't put words in my mouth. Don't say things I did not say. I am saying that we have received a scientific report done on a scientific basis on the performance of the police commissioner by an independent commission comprised of distinguished professionals. On what basis would we reject the rating of good from the Police Service Commission? Because we will be rejecting the whole commission as well. Do you realize that? If we say that this report is nonsense, these people don't know what they're doing, they are out of touch, they did a bad evaluation, on what basis would we do that?
Okay, the original question that I did ask, and it hasn't been answered yet after about 15 minutes, was that are you confident that this reappointment or this extension will lead to an improved crime conditions in the country?
Well, I don't know if you saw the response of the Chamber of Commerce.
No, well, you are the Prime Minister AI, not the Chamber of Commerce, so we want to know your views.
Did you see the response of the police second division?
No, no, don't ask. You are in the hot seat. Don't ask me. You,
The
you have
way,
to answer your.
the way I
your
would
views.
deal with it, I see that the second division of the police force, which is the bulk of police officers in this country, you know, you have a first division and second division. So at least 2/3 of the police officers in this country are second division. This is people from sergeant go down, because the first division starts at inspector, superintendent. The ranks are not, I'm not totally clear on the ranks, but I believe it's inspector, superintendent, senior superintendent, and then you get up to assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, and so on. But below that, you have sergeant, corporal, and going down. So thousands of police officers, through their association, the vast majority of police officers have come out in full support of the extension of the sitting commissioner of police. Now that's a very positive sign, because it means that they are ready and willing to work with her. You know, there could have been a different reaction. There could have been a reaction, look, we don't agree with this is nonsense, and then you'd had disunity and a lot of intrigue and bacchanal within the police service. But no, you have the vast majority of police officers saying, we think this is a good thing, and we are willing to work with Ms. Christopher. You have business associations. This is why I refer to all of these things, and I will answer your question eventually. So you have the premier business association in the country coming out in support of the extension. You have various academics coming out and giving critical support. You have the usual suspects saying it's a terrible idea. So you have the opposition and other aspirants for political office and disgruntled people saying that's a terrible thing. I would think, on balance, when I look at the reaction of the people that Ms. Christopher has to work with, when I look at the reaction of this premier business organization, and when one realizes that she's only had 1 year in the job, and perhaps, you know, she was not a police commissioner before, there would be a learning curve as well. I would think that we as a cabinet, we had to support the police commissioner. We had to support her because she got a good rating, and we need to support the police. And it is clear that this decision has gone down well with the rank and file in the police service. So yes.
So guess what? You expect an improvement in the crime situation?
I expect to see in the second term of the Commissioner of Police better performance because of experience and because of what I'm seeing as unity within the police service. And a very important point made by previous Commissioner of Police Williams, he said that she now has something that other commissioners never had: 3 appointed deputy commissioners of police. And these deputies have different functions. Some would be in administration, some would be in operations. So you now have a commissioner of police and 3 appointed deputy commissioners of police. So I do expect to see an improvement in performance.
Well, you still haven't answered the question. Improvement in performance, does that translate to a reduction in crime?
I think I've answered you, I expect to see an improvement in performance of the commissioner and the police service as a whole.
Minister Himbert, just to correct one thing, first division stops at inspector. First division stops at inspector. From ASP go up is second division.
I beg your pardon?
First division officers second division stops at inspector.
So second division goes to inspector?
Yeah.
And then first division starts at superintendent?
ASP, assistant superintendent.
Assistant superintendent. Thank you very much. As I said, I wasn't totally familiar with the ranks.
The Commissioner of Police has been in office going on almost a year and a half.
15 months approximately.
Even before that, she was acting as Commissioner of Police, and then confirmed in January thereabout, and then extended in May. Right? That's well over a year. I have not heard anything of vacation. Was a decision taken by Cabinet to buy out a vacation leave for that period? And if no, any suggestion or advice to her to take some well-needed rest?
That matter has not come before us. I really can't comment on it. But you're raising an interesting point, a tangential point. If and when the Commissioner of Police has to go out of the country to attend, a conference with other heads of police services around the world, which happens often, and other overseas appointments and so on, or if the Commissioner has to take leave, for some reason is unable to function in the position, we will have to go through the convoluted process of getting the Police Service Commission to recommend an acting appointment to the President, who then send a notification to the Parliament for the Parliament to debate who should be the acting Commissioner of Police. And that might be only for a week. So it raises the question of how cumbersome and unwieldy these arrangements are. Because there's a decision of the court, Justice Kangaloo, which says that for an acting appointment, we must go through the parliamentary process. So in terms of whether the commissioner should take vacation, that matter was not before us. I wouldn't want to comment on that at all. She seems very ready to get to work. Ready and raring to go, as Minister Lidnombriga has said.
But she would be due legally some break.
Yes,
I think
but
it's 52 days.
yeah, but that matter is not before us. So I can't really comment on something that hasn't been drawn to our attention.
I was wondering, so in terms of the Police Service Commission's report, as you had identified, giving the performance assessment as good by the Police Commissioner in terms of this period that they had assessed, did that confirm the Cabinet's view of the performance of the Police Commissioner?
Well, we don't have a view per se. I think you asked the Minister of National Security that question and he didn't give you an answer. I saw that reported in... Now, of course, half of the things in newspapers are not accurate. But I saw that reported, assuming it's an accurate comment. I would like to adopt that position as well. I would not want to comment. We got a report from the Police Service Commission, and they gave a good rating. And when we looked at it, it looked as if they had done a very rigorous and scientific assessment, and we acted on that basis.
A colleague asked that question, but one of the questions I posed to the National Security Minister, which I will pose to you as acting Prime Minister, as you pointed out, the Police Service Commission is undergoing a process, a search for the post of police commissioner. If, let's say, going through the process, a nomination is sent to the President, to Parliament, etc., and so on, while you have the police commissioner now presently in this extension of term of office, how does the government...
That's a very good question. When we were looking at this thing initially, there were considerations whether you could extend the term of the commissioner by 6 months, so to allow the recruitment process, to take place. But the law is very, very clear that you have to extend in intervals of 1 year. So her term has been extended until the 13th of May, 2025. So that would be a very interesting question for the lawyers to look at, because you could take one position from a legal perspective, that there's no vacancy in the position until the 13th of May, 2025, or 14th of May, whatever the date is. You could take that position. There's no vacancy, so you can't appoint anybody. So the Police Service Commission might not send a recommendation for the appointment of a new police commissioner until very close to the date, maybe in April or something of 2025. On the other hand, we can't tell the Police Service Commission what to do. They're independent, so they might very well complete the exercise in December and send it, and then that's a matter for the lawyers to deal with. A very interesting legal point as to what would happen if a recommendation came and, the term of office, the extended term of office. But on the other hand, you have to recognize that it is the government that debates the matter in Parliament. So another way of dealing with that, let's say the recommendation came a couple of months before the commissioner's term, you could just, postpone the debate until you reach close to the 13th of May. You follow? But that's a very legal, academic question for the lawyers to look at. Okay?
It wouldn't trigger an automatic process by the Parliament in that sense.
Well, remember, the way it goes, the Police Service Commission does its process to allow itself to send a merit list to the president with respect to this post. The president simply acts as a kind of a post office box, unless there's some issue, sending the notification to the parliament. The parliament then tables the matter, debates it, and approves it, okay? There's no automatic process in the parliament. It goes on the order paper. Once the notification comes from the president, it immediately goes on the order paper. But the government doesn't have to debate it right away, because it will be under government business. You follow? So the government could decide, I'm not pre-guessing anything, because look, this thing come in February, Ms. Christopher's term goes to May, we wouldn't have this debate until the end of April or something like that. Okay, so there are many things there. I just don't know whether it will trigger some kind of automatic thing. That's for the lawyers to deal with. Okay? All right?
On another matter, if you don't mind,
Sure.
just in terms of the issue with the SSA, there are media reports today of persons having been detained as
I saw it.
Is there anything
I know
new
nothing.
or update?
I saw it. I know nothing. I know as much about that as whoever wrote that story in the papers knows. I don't know anything about it. I read the papers this morning. I saw it. I don't know anything else about it. That's really a police matter. Eh? So I suggest you ask the police.
My final question is going back to the original issue you had raised earlier.
Yeah.
What do you say to the public in terms of, as you have these issues of legal letters back and forth and whatnot, the communication between the Office of the Auditor General and Ministry, Central Bank, etc., as they continue to function, doing the work of the state, you have the budget coming up, etc. What would you say to the public in terms of what confidence they can have in all these offices working while you have these challenges going on?
Well, the work of the Auditor General does not affect the national budget. The Auditor General comes in after the fact, so that you have the end of the financial year, September 30th, and then you have something called the closing of the accounts, which must take place by the 31st of January. And it is then when the accounts are closed. Now, the closing of the accounts is really an internal audit by the ministry to look at, what is the actual revenue and expenditure. That's done in January. And then the information is sent to the Auditor General, who has a report by the end of April. So it doesn't affect the budget because the budget is delivered in October. So that the next time the Auditor General will be looking at the public accounts, with the exception of this special report, which we hope will be made, because the whole point of it will be next year, April. But we hope the special report will clear up all of this, because a lot of statements have gone outside there, and they give the impression that there are issues and problems with the national accounts. We have gone to the Parliament to extend the time to the end of this month for the Ministry of Finance officials to submit all outstanding documentation to the Auditor General. And we hope the Auditor General will take that information now and produce a special report, which should really be a sort of an update on the original report. And hopefully everything will be cleared up. But it doesn't affect the budgeting process at all. Okay?
Minister, my final question. There's an article, I sent it to you, but I've seen one take on WhatsApp. I don't know.
Why would you say that? How will you get through to me? Go ahead. That's what I said, how we get through to me. Go ahead.
It is titled, TNT is Worst Performing Regional Economy. I'm not sure if you saw that article, or if you saw the report that the article is based on, and if you care to comment on it.
Well, I didn't see it. How can I comment on something I didn't see? You want to enlighten me?
Well, as I said, I sent it to you.
No, but you want to enlighten me?
It's an article written by a colleague of mine, based on a report by Dr. Hussain, Dr. Roger Hussain.
Oh, come on. The same Dr. Roger Hussain who went public and said that the economy of Trinidad and Tobago would decline by 4.5% in 2023. Come on. I really don't have much time for the, what shall I say, the unusual statements made by Dr. Hussain. I really don't want to comment on anything he has to say. From the time he came out and said he read the IMF report from last year, not this year, because I noticed very silent on it this year. Last year, the IMF had said that there would be growth in the Trinidad and Tobago economy in 2023. That's what the IMF said. And he said that's not true. And he went into the IMF. He said if you go into the report and look at the numbers, you'll see what the IMF is saying is that the economy will decline by 4.5%. Okay? I really have difficulty dealing with somebody like that. So please don't ask me to comment on anything Professor Hussain says. Really have a problem.
What about Dr. Rebecca Gokul Bosland?
I have no idea what you're talking about. You know. I mean, this has all the features of an ambush. I don't know what article you're talking about. I don't know what has been said. You can't possibly expect me to respond to an article which I've already told you I haven't seen and I don't know anything about.
So I just given some.
But I'm not a seer man. Sorry.
So tomorrow.
I'll go and look for it. Now, where is this thing published?
It's online. I'm not sure if it's in today's paper, but it's online.
Which newspaper?
Guardian.
Oh, it's in the Guardian. The Business Guardian?
Yeah.
That's another publication I have a little difficulty with. Constantly peddling misinformation. But I'll go and take a look.
And respond.
No, I don't deal with the misinformation in the Business Guardian. I gave up on that long ago.
Alleged misinformation.
Well, that's what you say.
One thing really quickly, Minister, if you don't mind, just something that occurred to me. You would have talked about the cabinet's deliberations and so on in terms of the extension of the term of office of the police commissioner. The Prime Minister is on a foreign trip, on official business. In that deliberation, was there any communication between, let's say, yourself and the Prime Minister while he was abroad, or was this all chaired by you as acting Prime Minister?
Both. I thought it was so important that, yes, I had some conversations. But also I can tell you the Cabinet did not do this whimsically. The meeting went on for hours and views were expressed and, a fulsome discussion, comprehensive, examination of the situation. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome to another edition of the Children of Mastana